All right, let's talk about deployment security. So you already have a build, you already have a release candidate, you've done your code scanning, and now we need to deploy to a series of environments, ultimately ending up in a production environment. We don't want to have anything sensitive stored in source code. Okay, now that shouldn't have to be said in 2022. I'm going to say it anyway. You don't want credentials or anything that is slightly secret in Git repository. That's means app settings.json, any of the config files. You want to make sure that the only keys that are in there are ones that have no impact. They're only development level keys for an individual workstation that are totally meaningless outside, if somebody gets full access to the source code. You want to use some type of secret store, Azure Key Vault or LastPass, in order to store and retrieve and poke those settings in on the fly. Now, if you are able to dynamically use Azure Key Vault when applications start up to retrieve some credentials, that's great, and that's gonna close your attack vector a lot. There's a lot of applications out there where you got to have the secret in a config file in production. If you can encrypt that config file, that's a good mitigation. But at a minimum, for applications where you just have to put that security key in app settings.json in production, and there's a lot of them. Okay, there's a lot of them. You want to make sure that that is stored in a secret key with masking in Azure Pipelines or Octopus Deploy. Both of them support one-way only encryption from the UI, where they're stored in a secret variable for the purposes of poking them into the app settings.json file, but there's no way that any users of application pipelines Azure Pipelines or Octopus Deploy are going to be able to get that key out. Now, once you have fully automated deployments using either one of these tools, then's the time to make sure that you don't accidentally have unnecessary production environment access from any of your team members. If you don't have automated deployments all the way through production, then that's a huge gap now, because you have humans that are handling the security keys for every deployment. You want to get that automated. Okay. On build level variables like connection strings that do embed a particular secret, like a password, refactor them out so that the connection string is built on the fly from multiple other variables. Don't repeat the connection string and thereby repeat the secret, because then you have to mark the whole connection string as secret, and then nobody can even see what it is, and then you start to slow down developer productivity. All right, I think we covered all that. Okay, so with this process, there is one mistake that we still see people in 2022 making when it comes to implementing deployment automation. And the mistake that we see some people still doing is building from source code to production, or going back to source code to build to the TDD environment, or build in order to deploy to the UAT environment. If continuous integration is implemented properly, you will build once and deploy many. You will build once for a particular change, a particular commit in the Git repository, and you will create a deployable set of release candidate packages. If your application is super simple and only has a web application and a SQL Server database, then you're going to have two things to deploy. One deploys on a database server, one deploys on Azure App Service. And so you have two things to deploy and two packages. Every time your deployment automation goes to deploy a particular release number, it should go to Azure Artifacts, to your NuGet server, or go to the NuGet server built into Octopus Deploy and grab that particular release candidate and then deploy the two different deployable pieces to your web application and database. That way, the deployment is doing the exact same process every time, is deploying the exact same release candidate, and there is no attack vector that is possible between the build and production. And it doesn't even matter if something did get compromised in a down level NuGet package, because the dependencies have already been 100% embedded in the release candidate NuGet package. The scanned and verified copies of those libraries will be deployed all the way through to production. Whereas if you have anywhere a NuGet restore happening, then you may get a different version of a library between the time you had your CI build succeed and the time you actually put that build number in production. You don't want to open that attack vector. And that's why you want to build once, deploy many, because your build is your verification, and you want to create your release candidate packages and save them and use them.